Tennis star Jelena Ostapenko, once the fearless champion who shocked the world at Roland Garros, is no longer making headlines for her explosive forehand or her fiery on-court battles, but for something far darker, a shocking courtroom collapse that has left the tennis world in disbelief, one of the most dramatic downfalls we have ever witnessed in the sport. As the former Grand Slam winner broke down in front of cameras the moment her devastating verdict was read aloud. A verdict that didn't just end her career, but shattered her image forever, leaving fans stunned and asking the same burning questions. How did one of tennis's brightest stars fall so far so fast? What chain of scandals and controversies pushed her from global champion to courtroom tragedy? And what does this ruling really mean for the future of tennis itself? Today, we're diving into every explosive detail, from the infamous outburst that set her downfall in motion to the suffocating silence of that tense courtroom where her legacy was finally erased. This isn't just the story of Jelena Ostapenko, it's the story of how glory can collapse in an instant when talent collides with controversy. Jelena Ostapenko didn't just walk into that courtroom, she stumbled into it, carrying years of controversy on her shoulders. Once hailed as the fearless teenager who shocked the world by winning the French Open, she was now a shadow of that champion. No longer celebrated for her fire, but criticized for her fury. Her fiery temper that fans once called passion had become her curse. Every outburst, every clash with umpires, every insult hurled at opponents or ball kids piled higher until it drowned out her talent. The turning point came at the US Open against Taylor Townsend, a match that should have been remembered for its grit instead became a viral scandal. Her cutting remarks and visible rage spread across social media like wildfire. Sports shows replayed it nonstop. And suddenly, Ostapenko was no longer the prodigy with a powerful forehand. She was the villain of tennis. Sponsors pulled back, organizers looked the other way, and fans debated whether she was misunderstood or simply out of control. By the time officials announced disciplinary hearings, the damage was already done, her image had collapsed, and the world no longer saw a champion. They saw a problem. The moment Ostapenko entered that courtroom, it was clear that this was no ordinary day, no ordinary tennis match. There were no cheering fans, no echo of a serve, no competition to be won. Instead, the silence in the room weighed down like a thick fog. Gone was the bold, brash figure who once took to the court with the confidence of a champion, replaced by a woman whose posture was rigid, her eyes downcast, barely meeting anyone's gaze. She was a far cry from the fiery star who had once stunned the tennis world. The difference was stark. This wasn't the court she knew, where every drop of sweat counted. Here, in this cold, calculating environment, her career was on trial. It wasn't her backhand or forehand that would decide her fate, but her actions, her character, and the mounting pressure of her explosive temper. Her hands were clenched tightly on the wooden table, a reflection of the emotional storm swirling within her. The photographer's cameras flashed relentlessly, capturing every fleeting moment of vulnerability. The weight of the moment was crushing. This was no longer about tennis or wins on the court. This was about the person Ostapenko had become, and whether she could escape the consequences of the repeated mistakes she had made along the way. The WTA officials in the front row remained stone-faced, the seriousness of the situation unmistakable. The room was filled with anticipation, and the atmosphere was thick with the sense that tennis was about to make a statement, one that would affect not only Ostapenko, but the future of the sport itself. By the time the disciplinary hearings were announced, it was too late to save Ostapenko's reputation. What started as one explosive moment at the US Open had snowballed into a tidal wave of controversy. Her fiery nature, once admired for adding drama and intensity to her game, had now become a liability. Behind the scenes, the tennis world began to take notice, and not in the way she had hoped. Whispers spread like wildfire, first from tournament organizers, then from umpires and ball kids who had experienced her outbursts firsthand. She had crossed a line, and the once adoring public began to question whether the passionate player they had rooted for was actually a ticking time bomb, one that could explode at any moment. The media fed into the fire, endlessly replaying clips of her most dramatic moments. Soon, the narrative wasn't just about her performance on the court, but about her character off it. Sponsors started pulling back, quietly severing ties with her to avoid being linked to the growing storm. The media spotlight shifted from her powerful serve to her controversial attitude, casting a shadow over everything she had achieved. Tennis, which had once embraced her bold persona, now recoiled at the unpredictability she brought with her wherever she went. Ostapenko's public image had been tainted beyond repair. No longer was she a Grand Slam champion, she was a cautionary tale about the cost of unchecked behavior. The tension inside that courtroom was palpable. The usual thrill of a tennis match, the pounding feet, the crack of the ball, the cheers from the crowd was replaced by an unbearable silence. Ostapenko sat rigid, her once fiery demeanor now subdued as she faced the consequences of her actions. The contrast was impossible to ignore. This wasn't the arena she had once dominated, where she could rely on her power and aggression to win points. Here, in this room, there were no serves to return, no lines to cross. The judgment of her career, her very legacy, was in the hands of the WTA officials, whose faces remained emotionless, and the room was filled with the constant flash of cameras capturing every moment. Ostapenko's hands trembled as they gripped the edge of the table, her eyes focused on the floor. For the first time, she wasn't the confident champion we had once known. She was a woman bracing for impact, unsure of what would come next. Her legal team huddled close, offering their support, but the final decision had already been made. The room was heavy with the weight of what was about to unfold. The press scribbled furiously in their notebooks, while the officials sat silently, each moment feeling like an eternity. The outcome was clear. Ostapenko's career, built on the back of undeniable talent and fierce determination, was now at the mercy of her own actions. This was no longer a match to be won. This was a battle for redemption, and her fate hung in the balance. The moment the presiding official rose to deliver the verdict, the air in the courtroom shifted. It was no longer just a space filled with tension, it had become a place of reckoning. The heavy silence that had permeated the room now felt suffocating, pressing down on everyone present, as if the world had stopped spinning for those crucial moments. Every eye was fixed on the elevated bench, every ear tuned to the words that would seal Ostapenko's fate. The words were formal, deliberate, and filled with a weight that carried the gravity of what had transpired. When the official finally spoke, the room seemed to hold its breath. Jelena Ostapenko, they began, banned for life from professional tennis. Her eligibility to compete on the WTA Tour permanently revoked. No probation, no chance for redemption, no appeal. The words hung in the air like a death sentence, and the room erupted in stunned silence. It was a punishment few could have imagined, a ruling that shook the foundation of tennis itself. Fans, reporters, and even those who had predicted a harsh outcome were left in disbelief. A lifetime ban wasn't just a penalty, it was the erasure of a legacy, the complete removal of a once prominent star from the sport she had once owned. Ostapenko sat frozen, her body trembling as the realization of what had just happened set in. Her hands shook uncontrollably, gripping the table as if it were the only thing holding her up. The camera zoomed in, capturing the exact moment her composure shattered. This was no longer a player facing a defeat on the court. This was a woman broken by the consequences of her own actions. The room remained still. The only sounds were the frantic scribbles of journalists, trying to record every detail of a moment that would go down in history. As the final words of the verdict echoed in the courtroom, Jelena Ostapenko's body visibly buckled under the weight of what had just been declared. Her face, once so fierce and determined, now twisted in disbelief as the reality of her lifetime ban sank in. There was no redemption, no second chance. The cameras captured every painful moment, every tear that glistened as it rolled down her cheek, every trembling breath she took. She leaned forward, burying her face in her hands, unable to hold back the overwhelming rush of emotion. It wasn't just the loss of her career that crushed her in that instant, it was the collapse of everything she had worked for. The years of triumphs, of Grand Slams, of the fierce competitor who had battled through every setback, all of it seemed to unravel before the world's eyes. In that one, crushing moment, Ostapenko wasn't the fiery champion who had once taken the tennis world by storm. She was a woman undone by her own choices. Her hands gripped the table, her knuckles white from the pressure, as her shoulders shook with silent sobs. Those who had once cheered for her now watched in a mixture of disbelief and sympathy. The woman who had inspired so many was now a symbol of everything that can go wrong when an athlete's behavior goes unchecked. Her downfall wasn't caused by a rival's strength or a missed opportunity. It was the result of years of poor decisions and a temper that she could never quite control. The reaction to Ostapenko's downfall wasn't confined to the courtroom or the tennis world. As the verdict reverberated around the globe, it sparked an avalanche of reactions. Breaking news alerts flashed across every major outlet, and social media erupted with a storm of opinions. Fans, analysts, and even casual observers began weighing in, each one dissecting her collapse and debating what it meant for tennis. For many, the image of Ostapenko, once a feared and admired competitor, reduced to tears in front of cameras, symbolized something much larger than just one player's career. It became a metaphor for accountability, a stark reminder that no athlete, no matter how talented, is above the rules. The images of her emotional breakdown quickly went viral, transcending the boundaries of tennis. They were shared across platforms, turning Ostapenko's fall from grace into a global spectacle. But the public reaction wasn't uniform. While some expressed sympathy, pointing to the immense pressure professional athletes face, others felt no pity. They saw her downfall as the consequence of her own arrogance, her own refusal to control the anger that had consumed her career. The tennis community, too, was divided. Some former players offered support, acknowledging the mental toll of the sport, while others, like Naomi Osaka and Rafael Nadal, made it clear that respect for the game and its values was non-negotiable. Corporate sponsors, who had already distanced themselves from Ostapenko, now seized the opportunity to further distance their brands from her. Major companies released statements, reaffirming their commitment to professionalism and integrity, making it clear that they would not align with someone who had brought such a controversial reputation to the sport. Even the Women's Tennis Association, WTA, issued a statement, justifying their decision as necessary to uphold the standards of the game. The fallout wasn't just about Ostapenko, it was about the message this ruling sent to the entire sport. Tennis had drawn a line in the sand, and that line wasn't just about victories on the court. It was about conduct, respect, and accountability. As the dust began to settle from the chaotic aftermath of Ostapenko's fall from grace, tennis was forced to confront a fundamental question. Was this the sport's reckoning, or was it simply the loss of one of its brightest stars? The decision to ban her for life had sent a resounding message, a message that no athlete, no matter how talented, could be allowed to tarnish the sport's integrity without facing severe consequences. For Ostapenko, the echoes of her once promising career would now be drowned out by the sound of her own failure to rein in her volatile temper. Her collapse was not just a personal defeat, it was a public one, a stunning reminder that talent alone is never enough. For those who had watched her rise, it was a bitter pill to swallow. The fiery competitor who had captured hearts with her aggressive style and emotional play was gone, replaced by a woman whose uncontrollable outbursts had overshadowed her talent. The memories of her triumphs on the court, like her dramatic French Open victory, now seemed distant, like fragments of a different person. In the place of that fierce champion was someone broken, someone whose career had unraveled in a moment of reckoning. Yet, this was not just the end of Ostapenko's journey, this was the beginning of a new era for tennis, one where accountability would no longer be optional. The sport had drawn its line in the sand, and future stars would have to step up not just with their skills, but with their character. They would have to show that being great wasn't just about winning titles, it was about respecting the game, the fans, and themselves. Jelena Ostapenko's downfall had been swift and brutal, but it had ultimately served as a wake-up call. Whether tennis could fully recover from this loss, only time would tell. The sport had faced a crisis, but it had also faced a choice. The message had been sent. Talent may win trophies, but only integrity can secure a lasting legacy. Jelena Ostapenko's career was a roller coaster full of explosive highs and crushing lows, but her ultimate downfall has become more than just a personal tragedy. It's a pivotal moment in tennis history, a stark reminder that greatness isn't only measured by trophies or talent, but by the choices athletes make off the court. The sport of tennis has drawn a line, and that line is clear: integrity, respect, and accountability are just as important as winning. Ostapenko's dramatic collapse inside that courtroom is now a part of the sport's legacy, and her lifetime ban has sent shockwaves far beyond her career. It has sparked debates that will last for years about the pressure athletes face, the consequences of unchecked behavior, and the true cost of fame. But one thing is undeniable. Tennis has changed. As future generations of players rise, they'll carry with them the lessons of Ostapenko's rise and fall. They'll understand that no matter how powerful your serve or explosive your forehand, one mistake, one pattern of disrespect can ruin everything. The game of tennis is about more than just winning, it's about earning the respect of your peers, your fans, and yourself. So, what does the future hold for Ostapenko? Her story is far from over. The world will continue to watch, but now through a new lens, a lens focused not just on her talent, but on her accountability. For tennis, this moment has defined a new era, and for Jelena Ostapenko, it has served as a final, painful reminder. In the end, no victory can shield you from the consequences of your own actions.